This is your 20-minute podcast, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. And our special guest today is David Loshelder, an author who has a life-changing system to make you the person that you need to be. And the name of his book is Take Care of Number One So You Don't Step in Number Two. If folks can't remember the name of that book, I don't know what, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So the name of the book came from a joke in days gone by, I assume?
Yeah, I was working with some people, and you would say, on leaving, take care of number one, and I'd always pause and then say, so you don't step in number two. And then eventually, I would just say, hey, make sure you take care of number one, and they would just finish the sentence. And one day I said, boy, that'd be a really cool book title.
That's terrific.
I put the book together, and there you go. There's the title.
Good for you. And it's, I'm reading your bio here, 7 ways to manage yourself so you can effectively lead others. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the whole premise of the book was to be able to manage yourself, invest in yourself, so you can give back and lead others. I think that there was the leadership gap is the fact that people need to invest in themselves first before they can lead others. So you have to gain that ability to understand that, as you put yourself through the paces, you're gaining skills. And those skills can be given back later to others. But you got to put the energy first in yourself. And so it sounds like a selfish endeavor, but actually it's a benevolent if you think about it, because the more you invest in yourself, the more you can give back. And so that was kind of where I was going with this, was the fact that we were trying to find a way to communicate that with the people that are going to be taking charge of businesses in our society in the future. The millennials are coming into the management system now, and it's more important now than ever to be able to teach people and have them understand that it's really important to kind of give everything you got for yourself first, and then really take that energy and give it to others. And that's how a leader is built. That
makes all the sense in the world, because if you can't invest in yourself, how can you invest in others? And it gives you the opportunity to pay it forward, build a stronger, more cohesive team, and get people working together, I would assume.
Yes, yeah, very much so. It's one of the things that I found that, we all have barriers, and there's certain things that stop us. And so, I learned that as an athlete. I was a judo athlete in the sport of judo for years, and I traveled internationally and nationally and competed. And one of my goals was to win a national championship and make an Olympic team. And I never was able to reach that goal. But however, I was successful at some level. I did take third place 5 years in a row. And so you say, oh, that's really great. But I didn't reach my goal. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure, I wanted to get to the national, I wanted to stand on that podium and have that gold medal. And so I always wondered, what was it that stopped me from taking that leap? Like, what's the difference between third and first? And so over the course of the years, I started to learn that, we all have certain mental barriers, and we're all conditioned in some way. There's what I call the gravity of life. And this gravity is always kind of pulling on you. So you have to kind of, make sure that you can fight that gravity at all times, because you're either climbing or sliding. There's really no in between. We don't really stand still. We're moving in two directions all the time, and you have to kind of fight that gravity. So, I found that it just made a lot of sense to kind of look at and go deep inside and do some self-reflection and see, what was stopping, why was I being stopped? Was it somebody else or was it me? And it's always you first.
Right.
So you have to go and say, what am I doing, mentally, physically, spiritually, that's really stopping me? And so I started to learn, there's certain conditioning factors that happen in your life. And I give an example in the book about, it was, two psychologists in 1967. They did an experiment with a dog. They called it a shuttle box. And they put this dog in a box, and they put a divider in between, and they would shock the bottom of the box, and that dog would jump over the divider. And then it would shock the other side, and the dog would jump back and forth. And then eventually they took the divider out, and they would just shock the entire floor. Well, the dog had nowhere to go. And so eventually the dog just laid down and just whimpered. and they had this psychological term they coined called learned helplessness. And, if you take that out, and that psychological term is for all of us, because we're all animals, right?
Sure.
You're always getting shocked in some way. And if it's someone saying, oh, don't do that, or that's ridiculous, and you might try something, a manager might say, hey, don't do that, that won't work, or whatever, and you kind of get beaten down. Over the years, you wonder why you stopped trying, and you don't realize why you stopped trying, because it was those little shocks over the years that caused that learned helplessness, where people just kind of give up and they lose their motivation. So you have to kind of go back and see, what was shocking me all the time, and recognize that first. Once you recognize that, then you can deal with it. Once you deal with it, then you can do something about it. And that was kind of the idea.
Learned helplessness. That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And, as a parent, as a supervisor, as a manager, as a boss, as anybody in leadership has to be really careful when they're leading others, because you can find, if you're doing the wrong things, you can inadvertently shock people into become very unmotivated, very unhappy in their careers and in their jobs. And you wonder why these people aren't being led. Well, because maybe that's one of the problems. So that's why you have to kind of really go deep inside and say, what am I doing that makes that difference in others as well as myself?
In reading about you, I know you worked as a child and family therapist and a manager and director of some programs for the nonprofit sector. Did those experiences help you define this journey that you're on?
Yeah, I think the combination of my sports career and being in positions doing the therapy and being a manager director, it really gave me a lot of experience in terms of what it feels like to be led and what it feels like to lead. And so that unique perspective, which was really a great experience to have, it really taught me a lot on how to deal with other people, but also how to deal with myself as well.
And if your experiences in helping people peel back the onion, for lack of a better term, that must give you some kind of a mirror to help you do the same for yourself.
Yeah, it really does. I always thought to myself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid to fail? It was that type of
Sure.
thought, right? We've heard that before.
You bet.
And then I've always wondered, when you put yourself in somebody's shoes, what does that really feel like? Because, it's so easy to say, oh, just suck it up and just do it. When in fact, you don't really understand what this other person's going through. And so I think that being empathic, the ability to be able to have different perspectives on what's happening to someone, really kind of gives you insight onto your shortcomings and your ability to be able to say, you know what, that would be difficult. What would I do in that situation? How would I respond to that? And once you start to do that, I think it really does. It's trite but true, but it does make you a better person if you really take that empathic look on other people and kind of and compare and relate, and then you can really help somebody, because if you can do that, then you're able to kind of gain that trust. And if you gain that trust, as if it's a therapist or a leader or a supervisor or whatever, then you're able to be very effective. And that's where, when you're managing yourself, you can effectively lead others, as the subtitle of the book says. And
when you earn that trust and they mirror that trust back to you, that in turn helps build your confidence, and you guys and gals just keep feeding each other in a real growing way, I would think.
Yeah, it's a good point, because you heard that everyone's heard the term the one bad apple
right
ruin a whole bushel. And it's really true. When you start building trust in a team, that trust becomes contagious. And you see really good football teams. They have really super talented players, but they don't have that synergy or that cohesiveness that they would need to actually win as a team.
Right.
Individually, you have a whole bunch of great players, but they're not winning. But then you have this team that's average athletes perhaps that are great with working in a team, and they're the champions of the Super Bowl. So, it's not that one person, it's everyone working together in concert and trusting each other's abilities to be able to kind of to reach a goal that, say, a business would have or a family would have, or whatever team you're on. That's really an important part.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it's Man, I just love the fascination of that. And especially in as crazy as this world is now, where it's all the microwave, let's get something real quick, real quick, real quick. If you don't have the ability to hire and coach and train a great team with great processes, it makes competition really tough.
I think that's probably the main problem now is the fact that everybody wants something so quickly, and it's only a text message away. It's
Right.
only a Google click away. And if you don't get it in 0.001 seconds, then you're going to move on to something else. And I think when you're building something, you really have to let it mature. You don't just like plant you plant a seed and say, "Come on, let's go, let's grow, hurry up." You let it grow, and you got to water it. And so with that, there's no difference in building a good team or your professional development or your personal development. It does take time, and you have to give it time. You get hurt. I hurt my back, and it was like I was hoping I would get better in one day. Well, the physical therapist says it's going to take about 10 days.
Right.
And guess what? It took about 10 days because your body takes time to heal, just like anything else. So I think when you're building, to have those clear goals and to have that vision, you have to have clear vision, because if no one can see it, then you're not going to mobilize people, and you have to be able to articulate that. So that's where the trust comes from too, because they know where they're going with you, and they will follow you. They will do it with you. And so, with that, you need a vision to build a team. And so that's kind of the idea, where you're going to find yourself constantly communicating, working synergistically with everybody, making sure and keeping track of how people feel, checking in. If you lose track of what people are feeling, then you're really not connected to them. And if you're not connected, then you're not going to know what they're doing.
Absolutely right. And with all those processes that you're just talking about, that helps create that patience that you need to allow that company to grow and flourish.
That's right.
Because it takes a lot of time sometimes in this competitive environment that we're in, right?
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned training, which I thought was a really good point. And, I think we need to put more time into training people, and kind of going back to the microwave example, where, you want it done in 1 minute. When you bring people on, people want to be led and trained, and they want to learn. And you need to have a system in place to be able to have that happen. And so if you have a really good training system, and people are excited about learning what they're learning, and they're comfortable in that process, and they're challenged, then they're going to be sticking around a little longer. My dad worked for the same company for 46 years. You don't hear that anymore.
No.
You get a job and then just retire from it at age 65.
Right.
People have, 7 jobs in their career. They change careers throughout that lifespan. So, it's that type of thing where it's really important to be able to say, okay, it's the training that helps people learn. And even if they do leave, at least you've given them something to leave with. And so, well, I just had this job and they didn't do anything for me. Well, your reputation's built on coming in the door, but also going out the door. And so I think it's really important to be able to say, we're here to build people. We're here to help people build themselves and build professional and personal development. So, if they do stay or they don't, or when that turnover is, at least we feel comfortable with the fact that we have left them with something they can go and help society with later at a different job. And I always believe that as a manager, because when you're working for me, I want you to be able to continue to learn. And if you go somewhere, you're going to say, boy, I learned a lot from that guy. I learned a lot from that company. And I think that's a very special thing when you are leading a group of people.
No question about it. And the two things I like about what you're saying, one is when you're in that environment, you embrace being held accountable, right? And the second thing is when someone works for you for a while and you've trained them and you've built them up and it's time for them to move on for whatever reason, for the most part, they're still going to be a face of your company because of the experience that you've given them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want somebody to go to HR and say, I had a horrible time working here,
right,
when they're late walking out the door. Nobody wants that. But what you do want is you want someone to tell 10 of their friends and 200 of their Facebook friends that this was the best place I ever worked, but I found a better opportunity because of X, Y, Z, is because maybe I grew out of the job. Maybe I've gained so much skill working there that now I'm qualified for 5 other jobs. And that's pretty awesome if you think about that.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And I'm going back to your gravity analogy early on in our conversation. It sure is much easier to fall with gravity than it is to swim upstream against it, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. There's all kinds of forces that we have pushing on us. The one I mentioned was ourselves. The other are other people around you. Choose your friends carefully. And the other one's the environment. The environment that you live in and how you live. So structuring all that, making sure that you're building a good social network that supports you and your goals is, I think, paramount to reaching those aspects of your life that you want to, be in.
No question about it. So you've got another book. Was it your first book, the Protect Yourself, the Top 10 Life-Saving Self-Defense Techniques?
Yeah, that's my first book. I since I was a martial artist most of my life, I decided to write a self-defense book. I was doing a lot of self-defense trainings and seminars, and some people came to me and said, this is really good stuff. Would you write a book about it? And I never thought about it. So I put it together and had a really good time. I like that book because it's based off a curriculum that I built. And it's used in different places around the country, that curriculum, and they use that book. So it's pretty cool to have that happen.
That is cool. And then it got you in the kind of the book writing frame of mind that probably made this second book a little more enjoyable, I would imagine, for a whole different list of reasons, I know. But
yeah, I had a ball writing this book. I always thought that this is a very important part of my life. And I did lectures on it for a long time. I kind of built the program and talked about it. And similarly, I started to write some other stuff, and it just turned into a book. And I thought, it'd be nice to have something tangible to show people. So if they don't hear the lecture, they can read the book and kind of learn from it.
Absolutely. So your latest book, Take Care of Number One, so you don't step in number two. Again, nobody's going to forget that title. I don't care who you are. 7 ways to manage yourself so you can effectively lead others. And they can get a hold of you at takecareofnumber1.com, and that's takecareof.com. And I assume all your contact information's on there?
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
Okay. And people can order your book through your website, through Amazon. How can they do that?
Yeah, through my website and through Amazon.
And David's last name is spelled Loshelder. David Loshelder. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and continued success to you.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, you bet. You've been listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower and our special guest, David Loshelder. And again, his website, takecareofno1.com. We hope you'll join us again next time, and be sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/your 20-minute podcast.
Until next time, don't forget to download your free audiobook at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. That's audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast for your free audiobook. And thanks for listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower.